So one of my favourite bands when I was growing up was Linkin Park. I started playing guitar in the early 2000s, probably at the absolute peak of nu metal. So bands like Linkin Park, Papa Roach, Korn, they were mainstays in what I was listening to at that point in time, and they were a huge influence on my guitar playing in the early stages. Seeing the news this week that Linkin Park are now back has reminded me just how many great riffs they have in their back catalogue. These are riffs that I have personally spent hours and hours playing along with myself when I was starting out playing guitar. And in this video today, I'm going to be showing you how to play 5 easy Linkin Park riffs. So all of the riffs I talk about in this video actually have accompanying tab files as well. If you scroll down to the description of this video, there's a link over to my website, which you can hit, and that will give you access to the tabs for this lesson as well. Over on my website, you also have the option to sign up for a 7-day free trial of my guitar course. It's completely free for 7 days with absolutely no obligation, and it gives you access to my entire beginner guitar library. So please check that out as well. If you're learning guitar and you want to push yourself to that next level, there's some great stuff over there that will help you with that. So gear-wise for this video, I'm using my Shergold Guitars Provocateur, and this is plugged into the Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200, which is just out of shot there. You can see a little bit of it in the corner of the video. So before we start learning these riffs, we've got to get our guitar in tune. So Linkin Park tune to a tuning known as drop C sharp. Now what this means is we're tuning our guitar to drop D, which is when the low E string goes down a full tone to a D, so that's D, A, D, G, B, E. But then we're tuning everything down a further semitone. So we have C sharp, G sharp, C sharp, F sharp, A sharp, D sharp. Those are our tuning notes for this tuning, and it sounds like this. So even though we're in this alternate tuning, when I reference the strings in this lesson, I'm going to refer to them as D, A, D, G, B, E, just for your own reference points, even though we are tuned to something else. So when I reference the A string, I'm actually referencing the G sharp string, but we'll use the term A because that works as a great reference point for everyone. So now that we're in tune, we can get started. So the first riff I'm going to show you how to play is the intro and the main riff from the track One Step Closer, and it sounds like this. So there are two main parts to this riff. You've got the first part, which is the intro of the song, which is the single note line, and then you go into that more chord-based, heavier riff. So the single note line for this uses some natural harmonics, such as when we rest our finger very lightly above the fret wire of the fret that we use. So starting out with an open on the low D, followed by a natural harmonic on the 5th of the low D, we're playing that by resting our finger lightly above the 5th fret wire. Then we're playing that open once more, followed by the 7th fret on the A string. Just like that. Timing wise, we're leaving a little bit less of a gap on that second one, so you're going from the second open to the fretted note a little bit quicker. Then the second half of the riff, we're playing 8 on the low D, natural harmonic on the 7, open low D, 3rd fret on the low D, same rhythm. So those two parts together make up the whole riff. When you're doing those harmonics, make sure you're not pressing down on the string because you don't want to mute the string. You just want to lightly sit above the fret wire to get those harmonics out. Then we're coming on to the more chord-based, heavier part of this riff. So starting on with 2 low D power chords. Now to play this, we just play the D, A, and D strings open, and that is our power chord. So playing 2 of those, then we're muting the strings for 1 hit, and then we're playing this octave chord here on the 7th fret of the A string and the 9th fret of the G string. The D string in between is muted by the underside of the index finger. So that's 2 opens, muted note, octave chord. Then the second half of the riff, we're playing the same power chord shape, but on the 8 and the 7 of the D, A, and D strings. So we're just barring across those 3 notes. Another muted note, and then an octave chord on the 3rd fret of the A string. So again, just like the intro, there's 2 main parts to it. It also follows the same sort of melody, so it sounds a little bit like the intro anyway, and the rhythm is exactly the same as well. So the distance between the first 2 notes is wider, the second 2 notes are a little bit more pushed together. The next riff I want to show you is a really fun riff that uses accents on a chord pattern, and this is actually from the song Bleed It Out, and the riff goes like this. So for this riff, we're entirely on the B and E strings at the top of the guitar. Now, the best way to play this is to actually bar across the 7th fret of both of those strings, because we're going to be using another finger to move some higher notes in and out of this. The first shape we're going to start with actually looks like a power chord. So it's the 7 on the B, the 9 on the high E. Now what we're doing here is basically playing straight 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But there's certain notes inside this that we're accenting. We're accenting the 1, the and of 2, and the 4. So on those notes, you want to play a little bit harder. You can think of it as groupings of 3, 3, 2 as well. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So that's the 1, the and of 2, and the 4 that we're accenting. So doing that twice, like that, 2 bars of that. Then we're doing just the 7th fret bar on its own for 1 bar. Same accent pattern. Then we're changing the pattern slightly. We're still playing straight 8th notes, but we're changing where the accent lies. I'm going to be accenting the 1 and the 3 in this bar. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Across the 1 and 2, I'm playing this chord shape, which I just showed you, which is the 7 on the E, the 9 on the B. And then when I get to the 3rd beat, I want to go up to the 10th fret on the B. Still playing the 7 on the E. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So it's 3 bars of the original accent pattern, 1 bar of that slightly different accent pattern. Now when you're doing this, because it's accents and you really need those to be tight, go slow. Make sure you're focusing on even note spacing, but getting those accents in the right place. So play that slowly and then build up the speed. Try not to go too fast into the accents because it does take a little bit of rhythmic coordination to keep that even flow, but add those accents in. So start slow and then build up the speed on that one. The third riff we're going to check out is an octave riff from the song Faint, and it goes like this. So this riff actually has like a little setup phrase that happens on the 3rd beat of the previous bar. So if you imagine there's a counting bar, this comes at the end of the intro of the song. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the guitar enters. On the 3 and 4, you're just playing that 5th fret octave chord on the A string 4 times. 3 and 4 and. That's like a little setup going into the riff. Then the riff itself is actually straight 8th notes. And you will have noticed my picking hand was just going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There's no interruption in the picking hand whatsoever. So that's the whole point here, is to keep this as even and as fluid as you possibly can. So what we're playing is a 2-bar phrase. On the first bar, we're starting on the 5th fret of the A string with the octave chord. We're playing 1 and 2, and then we're coming up to the 12th fret and 3, down to the 10th fret, and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So there's quite a big position shift there, so your slide will need to be pretty quick. Now, in the early stages of doing things like this with big position shifts, accuracy can be a bit of an issue. So what I always recommend is look ahead at where you're going. So when you're playing the 5th fret, you already know you're there, so you don't need to look at this. So as you're playing this, look up here to the 12th fret to where your target's going to be. So if I'm looking here, it makes it a little bit easier for me to find where I'm landing. That's true of any large position shift you have to do. So that's your first bar. Then the second half follows exactly the same rules, so it's octave chords played in that same straight 8th note strummed manner, but this time we're starting on the 10th fret, so going 1 and 2, up to the 12, and 3, down to the 8, and 4 and. So it's 10, 12, 8. So you've got those two parts that make up the entire riff. It's 5, 12, 10, 10, 12, 8. Biggest challenge with that riff is going to be those big position shifts. So like I said, take your time, look ahead, and really focus on that landing point for that first big octave skip. The fourth riff is from the song Papercut. We're going to be looking at the synth lead and the main heavy riff, which goes like this. So there's two main parts to this riff, one of which is that cool synth intro, which we're going to learn, and then there's the main heavy riff. Now the synth intro is really fun to play because it's kind of similar to Bleed It Out, where we have that high power chord shape. So what we're going to do here is use the index finger to bar across the 10th fret of the B and E strings, and then we're going to be adding the 12 and 13 on the high E with your third finger, your little finger, or a combination of the two. Now we're doing straight 16ths here, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, but we're alternating between the high E and the B string. The high E is picked on the beat and on the end, and then the B string is picked on the E's and A's. So it's. That's our rhythm for this. So when it comes to the notes we're playing, we're starting on that 10th fret, 1 E, then we're adding the 12 and 13, 2 E, back to 12 and So we're basically going, but with that B string in between. One full bar of that is 2 repeats of that passage. So on the actual studio version of the track, there is 2 bars of that in isolation with the drum loop in the intro. Then that keeps going for another 4 bars while the heavy riff comes on top of it. So you can either play that all the way through the intro, or you can then skip on to this next riff. The heavy riff uses a combination of low string power chords and octaves on the A string, so it's pretty similar to all the other stuff you've learned in this lesson so far. We're still sticking with that 16th note feel here. So we're starting off playing the low D power chord 3 times, followed by the 8th fret octave on the A, so that's 1 E and The second part is we're playing the low D power chord once more, moving to that 7th fret octave, 2 E, power chord open again on the and then we're going to this chord, which is a bar across the 3rd fret of the D, A, and D strings, but we're playing the 5th fret on the other D string. That's a really cool tension-filled chord. It doesn't quite sound as nice as a power chord. It has a little bit of an edge to it. So that's 2 E and So together. Then we're staying on this chord, but we're skipping over playing on the third beat, because the third beat note is actually an overhang from the note before when you're playing. That rings for an extra 16th note. So we're now playing on the E and. So it's 3, it's rung out, E and we don't play on the because we're letting it ring again. And then on the fourth beat, 4 E and So that rhythm is a little bit more complicated to count. What I always suggest with rhythms like that is just listen to it. Imagine the rhythm in your head. So we're going 1 E and 2 E and 4 E and So that riff repeats 4 times, but on the 4th time, there's a slightly different tail to the riff that takes you back into the verse. So instead of playing this, we're playing this. The rhythm is exactly the same, but the only difference is I'm playing the chord on the 4, and then on the E and this little palm muted phrase. It's the 1st fret on the D and A strings on the E and on the it's the 3rd fret. So it's just a slightly different ending of that. And that then takes you into the verse of the song. That's a really fun riff. Again, there's some big position shifts there, so take your time with the position shifts, make sure those are correct before you ramp up the speed. And the final riff we're going to look at is one that I always thought was a really great riff, and I always loved playing this when I was younger, and this is the intro riff from the track Place for My Head, and it goes like this. So this riff actually has some slightly tricky alternate picking going on as well. So if you're a new guitar player, this will be a great picking workout. We're starting on the 7th fret of the A string. We're playing that twice. Then we're coming to the 9 on the D string. We're playing 3 notes quickly like that. Those are quite hard to count because they're actually 30-second notes. So obviously most newer guitar players haven't got to that level of rhythmic subdivision yet. So again, like all complex rhythms, I would always suggest just listen to the way that sounds. Try and think of the melody in this riff and it'll be much easier for you to grasp the rhythm that you're playing. Once you've played that, we're then playing 10, 9, 7 on the D string. Now you can use whatever finger arrangement you want here. You'll notice I was predominantly using 3 fingers for that. I was using my little, my 3rd, and my index finger, but you could use just your ring finger if you wanted to. Whatever's comfortable, it doesn't really matter too much. Just find a finger arrangement that works for you. And then the second half of the riff is the same rhythm, but we're actually shifting strings here. So now we're starting on the 10 of the A string, coming down to the 8. So it's the same rhythm, but we're actually not moving as many notes. It's 10, and then those 3 quick notes on the 8. Then we're playing the 8 twice more, before ending on the 10. So rhythmically, it's exactly the same thing. tricky from a picking perspective. So if you're a new guitar player especially, there's some quite tricky moves there, especially those 3-note groupings. So again, like everything else in this lesson, slow it down, focus on the movement, get that correct, and then go for the speed later on. But yeah, there you go. There are 5 really cool, fun, and quite easy Linkin Park riffs. Those are riffs that I spent a lot of time playing when I was younger. And, you know, like I said earlier on in the video, seeing those guys get back together reminded me just how great some of the stuff in their back catalogue is. Let me know down below in the comments what your favourite Linkin Park riff is, because I'd love to hear what riffs you guys love from the group as well. Now, like I said earlier on, there are tabs for this. If you scroll down, there's a link in the description to a blog I've written over on my website, which will give you access to all the tabs completely free. And while you're over there, you can sign up for a free 7-day trial of my beginner's guitar course as well. So if you're new to playing guitar and you want to push your guitar to that next level, please check that out because, like I said, there's a bunch of cool stuff in there that will help you do that. Let me know what your favourite riffs are down below in the comments, and don't forget to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you so much for watching as always.